asked me to give a testimony on an experience that I had with the Eucharist. And my testimony is actually a story of how God spoke to me at the last Eucharistic revival night in April. Sitting in church that night with the Eucharist exposed in front of me, I picked up my Magnificat, and I read the day's Gospel passage, which was from John chapter 6, verses 1 to 15. I'll read it for you now. Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. A large crowd followed him, because they saw the signs he was performing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish feast of Passover was near. When Jesus raised his eyes and saw that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" He said this to test him, because he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 200 days' wages worth of food would not be enough for each of them to have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good are these for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people recline." Now there was a great deal of grass in that place, so the men reclined, about 5,000 men. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed them to those who were reclining, and also as much of the fish as they wanted. When they had their fill, he said to his disciples, "Gather the fragments left over, so that nothing will be wasted." So they collected them, and filled 12 wicker baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves that had been more than they could eat. When the people saw the sign he had done, they said, "This is truly the prophet, the one who is to come into the world." Since Jesus knew that they were going to come and carry him off to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain alone. So I finished reading that gospel passage, and the Magnificat also has meditations that it prints along with these gospel passages for each day. And the meditation from that day was St. Ephrem the Syrian. In meditation, St. Ephrem says, that in this miracle of the multiplication of the loaves and the fish, Jesus does not display his power, but his concern for our needs. If the miracle had been a display of power, it would have been impossible to count the amount of produce. But since the miracle was calculated according to the hunger of thousands, Jesus saw it fit to simply feed the people and have 12 baskets left over. As I reflected on this in the context of Eucharistic Adoration, I realized that the Eucharist has this same characteristic. If this was meant to be a display of God's power, surely Jesus would come to us under the appearance of something more impressive than a little wafer. Sure, the Eucharist would be impossible without Christ's power, but Jesus' humility in the Eucharist is what struck me that night. It's this, the Eucharist, the bread of life, is the primary way that Jesus provides for our needs while we are here on earth. Our need of food for our spiritual journey, our need to experience our Lord in an embodied, incarnational way, our need of an example of humility and service, and our need to be able to choose Jesus freely. If Christ came to us under a display of irresistible, undeniable power, then we would have no choice but to acknowledge him. But by coming to us under the humble appearance of bread, Jesus enables us to choose him, and therefore to really love him. Therefore, let us imitate Christ as much as we are able by serving others without drawing attention to ourselves. And let us also go to the Eucharist as often as we can to allow Jesus to heal us, to allow Jesus to nourish us, to allow Jesus to strengthen us, and to allow Jesus to provide for all